Hi there and welcome to my channel. It has been a little while since I have uploaded a video, but I've been working on them, and this one is about going through sketchbooks that I have tried and seeing if any of them can live up to the expectations of my number one favorite, and my number one favorite is the B100 40-pound watercolor paper. It's 100% cotton and I love it. It's the one that's in my sketchbook tour video, but unfortunately it's been discontinued, so I can't get it anymore. I have two more that are not filled in, so I do have a bit of a stash that I can work from, but in the meantime I still need to find a replacement for that ideal sketchbook. So in this video I'm going to go through, tell you what I found about the ones that I tried, what I liked, what I didn't like, and anyway, let's go check it out. The first sketchbook that I'm going to be looking at I found in a local art store. It's the Viviva Sketchbook. It says that it's premium handmade. It is made from 100% cotton. It's 7.5 by 7.5 inches, so a nice square shape, 40 pages, cold press, acid free, and 140 pounds. So by the front, that's all the criteria that I'm looking for. It says that it opens fully flat. It was $23.40 Canadian. And handmade with a faux leather bound outer binding. So I like everything that I'm seeing so far. I think that this would be a contender to replace my Watercolour Sketchbook. Next is the Artist Loft Sketchbook from Michaels. It is 140-pound watercolor paper. It's 24 sheets, 5.5 by 8.5, cold press, and acid free. It does not say that it is 100% cotton watercolor paper, and if it doesn't say it, it usually isn't, so I didn't expect this one to behave completely like cotton. Next is St. Cuthbert's Mill Bockingford watercolor paper made in the UK. I ordered this one from Jackson's. It's 20 sheets. It says that it's 200 pounds, so that's thicker than my typical watercolor paper, 19 by 28 centimeters. And again, it doesn't say that it's 100% cotton. And I know when I purchased this, I thought that it was. That was before I learned if it doesn't say it, it's probably not. And finally, my B watercolor is my old standby, 100% cotton, 140 pound, and it's what I've shown my sketchbook tours in so far. Okay, I just finished my painting in the Viviva sketchbook, this one right here. And I am following a tutorial from Skillshare. I'll link her tutorials below. They are what I used in each sketchbook, and that give me a really good idea for comparing what the sketchbooks could do and if they're going to work for me, because I do paint water a lot and I'm really enjoying her tutorials. So anyway, let's get to it. So with this one, she always does a practice in that Skillshare video and then a larger final version. And what I noticed with this paper is that it is very sensitive. So I could not get the tape off, and it was washi tape. I use the same tape on my papers regularly. It wasn't a new kind of tape. I've never had issues in it with cotton paper before. And this says that it is 100% cotton paper, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I even heated it with a blow dryer to loosen the glue, because when I noticed that it was going to peel, I figured, okay, I'll just heat it. It will come off loose, loosen the glue a bit. That always works for me before, but this, no way. It just came right off. And then what I also noticed, this one has gouache on top, so that's why I was able to get some little highlights there. This one I tried using masking fluid and it was a disaster. So at first I was going to try and rub it off with this, which I always use to get rid of masking fluid. And when I rubbed, it just took the paint right off. So not just the masking fluid, but you can see here, I'll just do it a bit. Just scrubbed the paper and ruined this whole section. Here, you can feel it, it's fuzzy, just like these areas. You can see the fuzz here, but it feels fuzzy here. And I just couldn't get the masking fluid off here. It just ripped an entire section off. I just stopped bothering. As you can see, there's just gunk stuck to it. Here I did some wet on wet. The background's wet on wet. You can see those blue tones. I was able to get some smooth blends, and I was able to layer on top without lifting too much, although it is also very easy to lift and difficult to get to layer on top of darker colors because it would just lift up after. So my comments, doesn't work with tape and masking fluid, and that's a deal breaker for me. Heavily textured, very heavily textured. That's not my style usually. I like to be able to do finer details, and this one is the most heavily textured paper I've tried, even heavier than a typical rough, because I would have to load with water to get into the grooves of the texture, and I've never had that problem before. And I already mentioned previous layers can lift, and wet on wet is possible. So maybe with a looser or more abstract style it could work. But I don't see this sketchbook working with my style, which is unfortunate, because you buy a whole sketchbook and it's supposed to be a watercolor sketchbook, but I can't use masking fluid or tape, and it doesn't quite work with the techniques that I prefer to use. So I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for. If you have ideas for sketchbook use when it doesn't quite fit your style and isn't even good to practice the techniques that you need to practice, let me know. I might use it for gouache. I do have gouache, and I was thinking about doing my studies for my oil paintings smaller in gouache first, so maybe this can be a gouache one, and I'll try that next. But again, it's heavily textured. We'll see. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this yet. Okay, my next one is the Bockingford. This one I showed earlier. I'll show you the paintings I did inside. I did this one, and this was actually an older painting. I did this a couple years ago, so I wasn't as experienced with watercolor and what I needed out of a paper, and at the time I remember thinking it's fine. But then I tried it more recently with the class, and I was able to get a smooth gradient, wet into wet. You can see that in the background. And I was even able to layer dry onto wet, or not, sorry, wet onto dry. And this used masking fluid and tape perfectly well. So I masked out for these buoys. This one I just painted around. It's a bit sloppier. And I taped the edges, no issues. So much better for that. But my main problem was it dries so quickly and unevenly. So it's hard to attempt many layers. It will lift easily, and it dries so fast that I can't work as long wet into wet and do as many wet into wet layers as I typically enjoy doing. It dries right quickly. Oh, and there's the name of the Skillshare class. Okay, and I thought that one wasn't that bad, so I tried another one. I thought this could be my new watercolor sketchbook, and I'm not gonna cover that up because it's kind of mean, but I really said I don't like this paper at all. It's either too wet or too dry. There's no such thing as a controlled application of the paint. The layering wet on dry only lifts the last layers. This tutorial is impossible on it, and I felt like I was wasting my time. So you can tell I was feeling quite frustrated and overwhelmed when I wrote that. So to show you, here is the exact, upside down, this way. This is the exact same waves that I attempted yesterday. I attempted them again today in this book, and it actually went a lot better. But that was until the end stages. So if you combine these two papers, they would be great, because this one has better wet into wet, better control, even better layering. It dries more evenly, stays wet more evenly. This one dries unevenly, dries very quickly, and leaves hard edges. You can see these hard edges, and then if I tried to blend the edges in, it would just lift the previous layer. So I was experiencing a lot of frustration over here. But it does work with tape and masking fluid. So if you could combine these, or this one worked with tape and masking fluid and had all the features it does, or this one had the qualities of this paper and worked with tape and masking fluid, they'd be great. But individually, neither of them suits my needs, and I'm really bummed about that, because I'm trying to find a replacement sketchbook. Okay, and then we have this one. I showed it earlier, but I didn't talk about it. This one is quite inexpensive. I got it from Michael's here in Canada. It's quite smooth, and for little studies, I don't have a problem with it. Just like the last two I showed you, fine for little studies. But just like most non-cotton papers, It will lift, it dries quickly, and pools the paint so it doesn't get that good wet into wet, several layers that I work in. For studies, great. I'm fine with that. Same with the other two books. If it's just for studies, great. But I want to be able to study in a way that is the same style that I'm going to paint in later. So I'm not sure that it's right for me. So this one, I was playing with the blooms. I bloomed on purpose. This one I tried to get a really even wash, but it still showed quite streaky. And then here I was plein air painting. So watching a scene and painting live. And it lifted okay, but I did have some problem with the tape peeling the paper, which you can see right there. So this one, again, fun. I can do little things in it, but I'm looking for one that is just as good as my artist grade, because this sketchbook, this B watercolor sketchbook, my baby. I have filled 2 of them so far. This one just has 2 pages left in it. And look at that. I can do wet into wet. I can do special effects. I can layer. I can use masking fluid, tape. I could do all of the things I love. Like, look how many layers and the depth of color that I could manage in this book. I hope this video was helpful to you. I know that I haven't found the ideal sketchbook replacement yet from the ones that I already have in my stash. And hopefully this helps you not to spend money on something that's not ideal for you either. It's better to have less of a good thing than more things that just won't work for you. So hopefully this will help people with their no buys, because I'm certainly not encouraging you to go out and purchase any of the ones I showed today. But I'm still looking. Let me know if you have any suggestions. I'm not buying anything new, but I might already have it. I do have a little bit of a stash hoard that I haven't tried, and I will be going through some of those, trying them out, and still looking for that number one. And remember that if you have one of these and you love it, that is great, because what works for one of us might not work for the other, and vice versa. I just gave the best review that I could for my style. Thank you for watching. Please remember to click like and subscribe.